everybody, it's Angel from Halo Inspirations. We give you inspirations to help you spread beauty and joy through your quilting journey. Happy Wednesday to you. Happy Hump Day. Oh, I'm so glad. No, I'm so glad to be back. I have missed you all completely, and we are ready to get on our regular program schedule of being here on the Fantabulous Wednesdays. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Today is all about bias binding. So what is bias binding? Well, you know, when we cut, and if you want some help with some binding, I'll throw a video link up here. And but the binding being around the quilt, most of the time when we cut strips that are selvage to selvage. Sometimes we may cut them along parallel to the selvage. With a bias binding, we actually cut at a 45-degree angle and make those strips. And I'm going to take you to the cutting board and actually show you how we do that. But I wanted to talk about, why would we use bias binding? Well, I'm working currently on a Christmas tree skirt, okay? And this is a circle. Whoops, let me take that off my mic, I'm sorry. It's a complete circle because it's a Christmas tree skirt. Well, with bias, when you cut, and when I pull you in to show you how to sew these, I'll show you more closely, but it has a lot of stretch, okay? So when you're going around in a circular fashion around a quilt, it allows it to stretch a little bit and allow it to ease better around that circle, opposed to the more stronger end of not having that stretch. So that's why I use bias binding. I'm almost done with burying all the threads for this Christmas tree skirt. And then I have to trim it and cut a hole in the middle, right, in a little slit so we can put it around the tree. But after all of that, I'm getting ready to do the binding. So that's why I decided to bring you in to show you how to get this done. Now, before, when I would do bias binding, what I would do is there was like this crazy folding method to get it all done. Well, I was just like y'all, I watch YouTube videos too, and I learned stuff. Well, Deb Tucker, and her YouTube channel is Deb Tucker's Studio 180 Design. You can check her out. She's phenomenal. But she showed a method that you don't have to fold. Hallelujah. Let's go ahead and learn how to do this together. I've already started, and I really, really do enjoy this process much better than the whole folding method. So I'm going to take you to the the cutting table, have you looking down on top so I can show you how to get this done without folding, guys. No folding. And then I'll bring you in closer and I'll talk about sewing these strips together, and I'll show you how the bias is just a little bit more stretchy, okay? So let's go ahead and get this started. I'll see you guys in just a sec. So what I've got here is a 12.5-inch strip. And like I said, if you were going to do typical binding, where we take the selvage to selvage and we cut our strips, 12.5 would allow you 5 strips width, right? And I use the Big Easy from Creative Grids, and it's the most I can get as a 12.5-inch strip. I feel like it works fantabulous, but you can use any ruler that you have, as long as it has that 45-degree. You could even use a 6.5 by 24.5 or whatever you've got, but it has to be able to stretch across the piece of fabric that you have. You're going to take that 45-degree angle and you're going to line it up along the bottom edge of your fabric, of your strip, okay? And as you can see, my ruler does in fact stretch across the width of the fabric, the 12.5 inches. So I happen to have a little corner here. What is, I don't know what line this is. I think it's a 60. degree angle. But when I line my 45 up along here, there's like this point. I'm using that here, and I'm also seeing that it lines up just for giggles on the point on the end of the fabric. Now I still have my selvage up there, so it really isn't truly a big deal. I'm just trying to get the angle correct, and I feel like I'm using the different points allows me to get a more accurate cut of 45 degrees. So I get this lined up. This is how we get it started. So I got the 45 down here. I've got it stretched out across. I'm just simply, and I got a new blade, guys, so this is going to be fun. I'm just simply going to cut along that 45. Yep. Just want to check it before I move it. Nope, see, I didn't get the edge. Okay. There we go. Now, if I needed more, I won't throw this piece out. I could simply cut a piece along here, and they would get really small, and I don't want to put a whole bunch of small pieces together for stripping, but I'm going to put it aside because I can at least get one strip that I feel comfortable with. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm lining up on this ruler the 2.5. Oh, do I want to do 2.5? I'm going to do 2.5. I've been debating back and forth, 2.25, 2.5. I decided on 2.5 because I'm going to go ahead and do machine binding on this. So I like that extra room, that extra wriggle room. All right. So I just want to make sure that I'm along the 2.5-inch line. Whoop, here's the problem. You want to do it where the ruler goes to the end still, right? You don't want to have to play loosey-goosey with that. All right. So that's what I say. This ruler stretches across the entire length of the fabric, and that is perfect. Just want to make sure I'm on 2.5 all the way down. Simply take your blade, and we've made our first strip. And as you see, it actually still has, it has the bias on there. Instead of, if we were to cut selvage to selvage, you know that we have square ends. So I'm going to pull you in closer in just a second and show you how to stitch those together. Look what I got over there. A little, oh, I don't know if you can see it. I got a little bump where I didn't cut that first one. It's okay. It's really okay, guys. It's binding. All right. So again, we line it up. I'm doing 2.5. If you were to do 2.25, you would line it up along the 2.25. All right, all the way down, making sure it goes across the stretch of the fabric. Give it a nice cut. And we have our second strip. Now, the math for this with a circle, how much I need, once I get it cut, I'm going to measure for sure all the way around. Usually your patterns will tell you how much you need. You're going to get about 10 inches worth of strip. So if I take that in consideration, then that's 20 inches, right? And I'm going to keep cutting this strip all along the 12.5-inch strip that I have created. And I'll let you know how that pans out, how many strips I actually get when I get to the end for you. I'm going to stop here because it's really simple with that part, but I'm going to bring you in and show you how to sew these strips together. So see you at my sewing station in just a sec. Okay, so I have 2 strips here. We're going to put those together. But before we do, I wanted to show you what this bias does. So if we were to cut the knot on the diagonal, this would be on the outside, right? Okay, it's nice and strong. But because we're cutting along the bias, look at that stretch, guys. Look at that. And I'm making this warped. We all understand what I'm doing here. But I wanted to show you, because going around those turns, this is going to help a lot, an absolute lot. Now, because we do fold it in half, so I'm going to be able to pull this around a circle. Much easier than if I were to do this with the regular way. So, and because of what is exposed, the threads on top are actually a little bit stronger, so hopefully it doesn't wear as fast. However, that's not my biggest concern. It's getting around those bends and being able to stretch it a little to get around that circle. Okay, it really does work amazing for that purpose. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to put these two together, and of course I always press my seams open inside of binding. It allows that bulk to be evenly distributed. Is that a word? Distributed? I don't know. If I did it on one side, you can, but when you fold it, it's going to have a little bit of bulk over here. If you open this up, it spreads the bulk out, and this lays so much flatter. And I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's definitely flatter within this area. Okay. All right, so we're going to sew these two strips together. Now, if you have right sides and wrong sides, you'll want to do this with the right sides facing together. But so this would be the right side, and on this side, when I flip it down, will be the right side. Okay. But what we're going to do is we're going to line this up. And what you want to try and do is you want about 1/4 inch of the dog foot on each side. And you don't have to be perfect. If you want to get out your ruler, you most certainly are welcome to. But eyeballing it works just fine. Now, what I like to do, so it doesn't shift a whole bunch, I do like to pin it. Okay. It's just my preference. You don't even have to do that. Now, I do want, what you're going to do is you're going to sew these two together from this little point right here all the way down to that little point where the two pieces of fabric meet, where that little divot is. That's what you're going to want to do. Okay. Well, y'all know me. I can't sew a straight line to save my life. So I'm going to draw a little line with a marking tool. Now, I am using an iron-off marking tool, but this fabric is pretty dark, number one. And number two, it's on the back side, so ain't nobody going to see it. So it really doesn't matter. But I just want to draw a little line. Whoop. Now see, this is fatter, and I want it to be on that nook. Whoops. And then once I get the two nooks together, I just simply draw a line. Okay. But this has a blunt edge. It's not real pointed. If I were to draw, for instance, with a pencil, you can see there's a huge gap between my ruler and my pencil where I'd be able to fit. The important thing is, if you're going to draw yourself a reference line, you want to make sure that it's on those points and then draw the straight line for it, okay? So let's bring you into the sewing machine. Let's get this sewn together. Okay, I am leaving the pin, and it shouldn't be in the way. If it is, I'll take it out at the point when I can. However, and get my foot rolled away from me. Oh, I still got to figure that one out. All right. So I'm going to line that up in that notch, in that little crevice where the two fabrics meet, and I've drawn that line. Okay. And I go back and forth, but I try to remember to go ahead and back stitch a little bit, just to keep it more secure. But I go back and forth because I am going to sew this on, so the end should be all right. Now I will teach you a little trick, or share with you, not teach you. I do try at some point to start to look ahead down here, opposed to watching where I'm sewing, and it actually helps a lot. It will help me get to that point. Now I would try to backstitch, but if you forget, it's not the end of the world. And I did, but you know, I'm gonna go ahead and cut threads, and I can pull this out. All right, let me pull you over one last time here. So this is what we have. And just like regular binding, I go ahead, now I'm just finger pressing for now, but I will go ahead and press these down. And what you'll notice is that you have these dog ears. Well, you just clip those if you so desire, but look how nice, just a real nice straight line. It did really good. I'm really happy with this. Now what I'm going to do at this point, so this is how you sew all your strips together when they already have that angled edge. So it's very easy. It's not difficult. So this whole bias cutting thing has been amazing for me because it saves time and energy. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to measure these two strips because I think my math was a little bit off. I know it was when I told you they're about 10 inches. So I'm going to measure two strips together and we'll get an idea on how many inches each of these individual strips are. So I'm going to let you know that when I come back at you face to face. So I'll see you guys in just a sec. Okay, so that is bias binding. Now I will tell you on my 12.5-inch strip that I cut selvage to selvage, I got 9 full length strips and 2 on the edges with the bias of the extra triangles. You know, I cut them off of the bigger triangles that were left. So I got 2 of those, but I also did a little bit of math wrong. So the length of, in my 2.5-inch strip on a, you know, for my bias binding that I cut from a 12.5-inch strip of fabric, point to point is about 20 inches, okay? When I measured the 2 of these, it's 37 inches-ish. It's bigger than my cutting mat, so I'm guesstimating. I guess I could have got a measuring tape. But the point is, you're going to lose about a 2-inch on each strip that is going to be lost in the angle and in your seam, okay? So what does that mean? Well, oh, nothing. No. It takes a little bit more fabric when you are messing with bias binding and your strips are small. Because if we were to cut binding normally on that 12.5-inch, I told you I'd be able to get 5 strips along there, selvage to selvage, which before we sewed them together would give me about 200 inches of bias or of binding, okay? This is giving us less, all right, because the strips are shorter and they're not those long strips, okay? So you do use extra fabric. So there is a whole mathematical, I probably, I'll either do a video in the future on how to figure out bias binding, or maybe a cheat sheet or some kind of something reference for you, because there is a mathematical formula for it. It's like you find the perimeter of what you're working with, multiply it by the width of the strips that you're going to cut in bias binding, then you square it. There's a whole math problem. Bottom line, if you're working with a circular pattern, it should have it. Now it's really interesting because the pattern I did, I didn't do it this way, but it does say you cut an 18 by 42 inch rectangle, so 18-inch strip basically, and then you recut that into 2.5-inch strips, and that's supposed to give you enough for this huge tree skirt that I'm doing that I showed y'all earlier, it's 48 inches in diameter. Okay, so it's 4 feet across in every single direction because it's a circle, right? But we also have to do other cutting and put other binding in there. So they did give some measurements. Now, I have read too, so for instance, if you were working with a certain size quilt, you might need 3/4 of a yard of fabric, where then you would then need for bias binding, you would need 7/8. So it does take more fabric. Not a lot, but enough to make a difference. Now, I did talk about, I encourage it for like circle type quilts. You might do a wall hanging even that is a circle, maybe a placemat. How cool would that be? Those are really advantageous to use that. And I did talk a little bit about the strength, and I wanted to explain it. When you cut on the bias, okay, so we are making these, we are cutting on that bias like you saw me do earlier, right? Yes, it's stretchy, but no single thread is exposed along the outside of the quilt. Unlike when we cut regular binding, it is. So because there's not a single thread exposed along this edge, if you have a quilt that you're going to wash a lot, it'll help that binding last longer because it has strength in that fold along the edge. Okay, so I did want to, it's not something that I think about, although I'm starting to think for some of the quilts that I know are going to be washed really heavily, I think I'm going to start doing that. And so if I drop a pattern, I might do a bias binding math for you. So you don't have to figure it out. But it's an interesting concept that I hadn't really given a lot of thought to, wasn't really concerned about. You may not be either. You know, there's nothing wrong with doing the binding the way, you know, the regular way, cutting long strips, selvage is selvage, or along the parallel even of your selvage. It's perfectly fine. I'm just trying to give you some options, and not just in a circle, but like, let's say you did rounded corners. This would be a good place to use because it'll help you make that turn. Be a great place to use bias binding. Another place I can see doing it, if you're not concerned about wear and tear, is in scalloped edge around your quilt, because you have a bunch of bends and turns, right? So I think that'd be a really great place to use some bias binding also. Man, the ideas. Oh, we're gonna have so much fun. Super excited. I just make sure that I did talk about everything. I think so. That is bias binding. Now, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to drop them down below in the comments. Send me an email, or y'all know how it works. I'm on Facebook Live at 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time because I'm here in Virginia in the United States, but I'll be there live to talk about any bias binding or any quilting and answer session. So whatever you got, you can come on aboard. I'll be there today at 3 p.m. I don't know what today is. I think it's the 26th. It's Wednesday. 24. I think it is the 26th. So Wednesday, happy hump day, back on board. So it was bias binding today. I'll see you at 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on Facebook. Hope to see you there. I also want to talk about, this month is Founders Month for Halo Inspirations. Some people call it birthday month, but we were founded on this month. This is the month that we got started and received our AOK, let's get it going. So this is our Founders Month, and we do have a Halos deal of the day on our website. Link for the website is down below in the shop. So every day until the 31st, until the end of the month, there's something on sale for you. And if you are a Be Inspired newsletter subscriber, you received an extra code of 20% off that you can utilize. even on sale items. And if you are in Creative Kingdom, our Facebook private group, you also received your own little discount code that you can use up until the end of the month, May 31st. Those codes are good if you have one until 11:59. If you don't have one, y'all come on over. I'll put a link for the newsletter. I'll put a link for Creative Kingdom because we drop special little things for all those wonderful cherubs that are in our Halo family. So I do want to say thank you all for all y'all support. Y'all are fantabulous. This is quite I love what I do, and I do what I love. But you know, even beyond quilting, it's those connections that I make with each and every one of you. You have a special place. I hope I don't cry. You have a special place in my heart. And I want to say thank you. Thank you very much for coming along. I'm hoping that you learn new things. It is our goal that we inspire you. Inspiration comes in many forms. There are things that you look at, new tutorials, new blocks you can learn, different kinds of color, fabric, pictures, maybe a new tool. Inspirations is a huge loose term, but we always want to give you more inspiration to help you do more of what you do, of spreading beauty and joy in our world. You will truly make a difference, and it means the absolute world to us. So I hope you do find inspiration here. But that is it for this week, guys. Bias binding, I'll be here next week. I believe we're going to talk about 80-20 batting, more specifically zoned in for that. That one should go really fast. I keep saying that, right? At any rate, I love you guys, and thank you all for stopping by. And until next time, may you all continue to be inspired, productive, and ever so joyful, and never stop making your dreams in quilting come true. We love y'all. Happy quilting. See y'all next week.